Welcome to This Day with BJ Arnett. Our guest today is Kayla Fierfonte. She is the managing editor of 360 Degrees of Grief. First of all, what is a managing editor, and how did you guys give birth to this book, 360 Degrees of Grief?
A managing editor is a person who kind of compiles all the stories, invites people to bring them in, and then somebody else does the hard editing of all the grammar and that sort of thing, and I managed, making the final decisions and the final decisions about which would be in the book.
Which stories would actually be in the book.
Yeah, and then how we would lay this out, and it's basically the overall view of the project.
Why 360 Degrees of Grief?
Well, when my mother was sick, she got sick and died in 3 weeks. And,
wow.
And during that time, I stayed by her bedside and watched people come and say goodbye to her. And I just kept thinking about how each of us were experiencing this so differently. Our perspectives were different. I was losing my mother, they were losing their friend, my dad was losing his wife. So it was such a different experience for each of us. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if while you're sitting here, and especially like with hospice and when you have long-term care, you have a lot of downtime, of quiet time, and wouldn't it be nice if there was a book here that I could just be reading, and it would be the same book that would touch my dad, and the same book that would have something in there for a friend.
Right.
So that's where the idea came from, and it took me a little, about 2 years to be ready to take on the project.
Really? Because you were going through
the grief myself.
Your grief process.
Right. And I kept in that time frame looking for books that would reach me, and I'd find things here and there, but a lot of times what I was reading was specifically somebody talking about losing their wife. And I'm like, I didn't lose my wife, I lost my mother. And that's a different experience altogether.
How did you gather people who were ready to even, because we were just talking about before we started taping, when my dad passed, I had spent a year of my life, just over a year of my life, just dedicated to my dad. And at the point when he actually passed, I didn't really want to talk to anybody. All your friends come over with well wishes and wanting to help, and none of them had, I think one of them had lost a parent, but none of them had been through the experience of taking care of their parent and still having your life to deal with or not. It wasn't a time where I really wanted to talk to anybody else. And I couldn't, for the life of me, find even someone who understood a glimpse of what I had been through.
And I was surprised by the response I got, because this is so personal so raw. And I really expected the book to be about the fourth of the size. What I did was, I asked a lot of people who I personally knew and invited them to participate in the book. And then I also put it out on my blog and Facebook and just kind of started talking to people about the idea and if they were interested. And it was overwhelming.
Wow.
We have 64 authors. There's 102 stories.
Wow, that's amazing.
Stories, poems, and songs, and a variety of different topics. And we had, a handful of people who said at the very end, that they were planning on it, and they were like, maybe volume 2. I'm not quite ready, but not very many. Most people, and it was an incredible process for the writers themselves to write their stories and go through it and share it.
Being able to tell somebody else what you experienced, what you went through. For me, it was recognizing that my dad, who literally picked me up out of a car accident, picked my body, I remember this so well, picked my body up off of the pavement and carried me and told the doctor, no, I'm not letting her go. You will have to put me and her in the ambulance. And I remember that to this man who was half of his weight, who couldn't feed, and I thought, that's not what I know my dad to be. And you don't realize how raw it is. But when you say it to someone else and they've experienced that, it kind of makes you both, I know what you're talking about.
I'm not alone. I'm normal.
And
that's what this was about. And a lot of people who were writing, what really drove them was so that they would be there for somebody else.
You want, I didn't want any one, male or female, the son or the daughter, to go through what I went through by themselves.
Right.
I said, your parent is saved.
Right.
They're going home to God. Let's celebrate.
Right.
This is a period of 360 degrees of grief, and I understand that, but for someone else, it's a relief.
Yes.
It's a, whew, thank you for telling me. I get it.
Right.
And all of these stories and all of these people, what ministered to you? Because even as I'm talking to you right now,
right.
and I'm trying not to really look at you close, because I am not going to cry on TV. but I know that we don't know each other. But there is something that we both experienced that beyond our Christianity causes a kinship that you and I can't explain.
Right. You know what really ministered to me with this, the subtitle was actually Reflections of Hope. And what really ministered to me was when I got to the end of all of this, and all the stories were all in there together, and I read them, they all reflected hope. And that's so amazing.
That's the cool part. That's the awesome.
It's amazing that in all this grief, I mean, there's the, you know, daughters being murdered, and, you know, all kinds of different heartbreaking, heart-wrenching stories of loss. And in the end, all of them have a reflection of hope, because they were all believers, and they all found comfort in God.
That's what makes it not such a sad story.
Right.
It's that finding the comfort in the Father himself. When you took a look at the massiveness of putting this together, the managing editor of putting this together, and you know, okay, now we're talking. We are causing people to feel better, and people are being relieved, and they now have hope, because even the writers, you were seeing it, I know. So, but you have to put this all together.
Right.
You have to decide what story, what direction, I'm not sorry, what order. How did you do all that?
A whole lot of prayer.
I know that.
Because really, I felt this leading to put this book together, and I kept being like, God, that really sounds like a big project.
Yeah.
That sounds big, and it sounds hard. Right. I was like, that sounds like a lot of work, and I really was like, where do I start?
Yeah.
And I just woke up one morning, and I had the title and the A to Z in my mind, and I was like, well, okay, thank you, God. I just got up, and I sat down to my computer and started obeying. And the way this whole project worked was amazing like that. It was so awe-inspiring, because I'd get to a point where I'd go, I really could use some other help. And someone would call me and say, I just lost my job. I was wondering if I could help you out by doing
it.
Yeah. No. And then
that's when you know
real.
Orchestration God is doing.
Right.
You know,
for real. Like I was just at this moment of this, oh, I just need another set of eyes. And Lynn McLeod called me and said, I just lost my job, and I don't even know. I just met her. And she volunteered. She was my second set of eyes when I needed another set of eyes, and then she got a job right after she finished.
That is so awesome.
Right.
When you know, before we started taping, you were telling me about how you came up with the cover, which is absolutely wonderful, because what I love about it is all of these stones, and then they're not exactly.
Right.
They're just not exactly perfect.
Right. They're just hanging on.
Just hanging on, but they all are staying together.
Right.
It does form a correct structure. How did you put the cover together?
Well, my daughters and I had been at the beach that my mother lived on on Whidbey Island, and she lived near a beach, and so we had gone down to the beach, and we had built this little stone structure, and it was just kind of a memory thing, because we had a lot of memories of her throwing rocks in with the girls at the beach and stuff, and so we just kind of built it as a little memory, and we took a picture of it and thought, well, this is for us, it's a special memory. And then when it came time to do this, I sent the picture to Dawn Finch, who did my cover for me, and said, I would love it if somehow you could work this in there. You know, I was thinking maybe she could do it little, because, you know, I did it from an iPhone. You know, so I was like, I'm going to get maybe some little tiny image. And she's like, sends it back. It's beautiful.
It is absolutely
beautiful.
beautiful.
It's gorgeous. And she worked magic.
This is absolutely beautiful. When I take a look at all of these incredible stories in here, and so many authors. How many authors?
64 authors.
64 authors here, and even some of them with pictures. When you read the stories, which ones, just share a little bit with us, which ones kind of stepped out to you and grabbed you?
There were several, but there was one that really tugged at my heart, was from T.J. Barnes, and it's about her mother, and when her mother gets sick, and what stood out was that it's such a different relationship than what I had. I had an incredibly close relationship with my mother, and her mother didn't raise her. Her mother had an aunt raise her, but when her mother got sick, TJ went back and served her mother. And she was the one who was there for her, and she showed her such mercy and grace and forgiveness for everything. And her biggest hope was for her mother to find salvation, and her mother does. And it was just like, okay, you know? Yes. And it was just such a beautiful picture of how Christ wants us to be to each other. And, you know, just she could have been angry at her for not being there for her, and yet she was the one who was there for her.
When it's stories like that, when it's results like that, when it actually reflects hope, then you know that things are moving in Dad's manner, because you know he's all about reconciliation. He's all about coming together to be who he's called us to be. You stepped into a whole nother realm. Managing editor.
Right. I've always only been an author, so it was a whole new thing.
Managing editor. So now, through such a tragedy, you receive hope. You are renewed. You are, again, have the opportunity to recognize to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. You have all of these things that you can point to in the spiritual area of your life that is now not separated from the natural area of your life. You are now walking out what God ordained for you to do before the foundation of the earth, which was managing editor of this book. That is really, really awesome.
It is.
It really is awesome.
I feel very humbled to be called to do this, and it was incredibly awe-inspiring, the whole thing.
Well, I thank you for inspiring us with it. It's 360 degrees of grief, reflections of hope. It is 64 authors with powerful stories that really can give you hope and understanding of what could have been a grievous situation, but gives you the understanding that hope is right there for you. I thank you for putting it together, for being the managing editor, and for allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough to tell your story to one person that told it to the next, and to the next, and to the next, and to the next, so that someone else could receive their healing from your experiences. God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, I hope you've gotten something out of that. You don't have to be grievous. You can be filled with hope. This is BJ. God bless you.